look, everyone. It's Samoa BRO. I'm back. That's what happens when the microphone cord pops out. It's kind of hard to talk into the microphone when it's not plugged in. But there we go. See, it's a good thing, though. I looked over and I saw there were no levels, and I said, let's take care of this now so I don't say the first 10 minutes of the show, and then I look and I go, oh, nobody could hear me. Well, now you can hear me. This is your SmackDown review. It is Friday, September 8th, 2023. Boy, that would have been really bad. You know what was really bad? The main event of this show tonight. Not a good main event. Now, in the main event tonight, we had AJ Styles and Jimmy Uso. Jimmy Uso is trying to get back into the bloodline. Jimmy Uso is trying to get back into the good graces of Roman Reigns. Now, this is the same Jimmy Uso who kicked Roman Reigns in the face several months ago back at Night of Champions. This is the same Jimmy Uso who cost his brother the WWE Championship at SummerSlam because, in his own words, he loves his brother so much he couldn't bear the thought of him becoming just like Roman Reigns. Because Roman Reigns has been corrupted. He's been corrupted by power. He's been corrupted by the championship. And so he did what he did at SummerSlam, because we're all wondering what the explanation was going to be. He did it basically because Roman Reigns is an asshole, and he didn't want his brother Jay to become just like Roman Reigns. The same Roman Reigns, who at every turn has done everything in his power to manipulate these two brothers and to marginalize them and all the things that he has said and done. And Jimmy Uso now is trying to get back into the bloodline. This is now the story. This is where the bloodline story is going because Roman Reigns is on vacation. Roman Reigns is not around. And so they have to find a way to drag this story out and try to keep it interesting until Roman is ready to come back. And we don't know when that's going to be. It could be next month. It may not be until November. We don't know. You're going to tell me this bloodline story hasn't gotten stale? There are still people trying to defend this as if, well, you know, the bloodline is as good as ever. You're going to tell me that this feels to you like the bloodline is still as exciting and interesting as it was 6 months ago? Yeah, the thing is, people will sometimes, when I talk to them about the bloodline, and I mentioned this at the end of my SummerSlam review, when I mentioned, you know, jumping the shark and all that, and there were a lot of people who agreed with me, but there were also quite a few people who said, well, wrestling fans today, they don't like long-term booking. They don't like long-term storytelling. And it's just a cop-out bullshit excuse. There may be some fans who don't like that and have the attention span of a gnat. I'll grant you that. I love long-term storytelling. And I've loved the Bloodline story. I don't hate the Bloodline story. In fact, I loved it. It was the best part of SmackDown, honestly, for the better part of the past 2 years. But you can also, at the same time, say that I like long-term storytelling, but this is getting dull. Both of those things can be true, and that's, I feel, where we are right now with this Bloodline story, especially when Roman Reigns is not around. And now Jimmy Uso has been traded away to Monday Night Raw. He had become one of the top baby faces on the brand, so he's not there anymore, at least for the time being. So now, in the absence of two of the biggest key players in this story, Solo Sikoa doesn't say anything. So if you're relying on Solo Sikoa to do a lot of the talking here, that's not going to happen. He stands there. He looks menacing. That's what he's good at. Paul Heyman is the one who does most of the talking. Jimmy Uso does some of the talking. But I'm finding myself really struggling to stick with this story. And unless we come to find out that Jimmy Uso is trying to play them, and I'm even trying in my mind to imagine what would be the point of any of that, it's hard for me to really get into the story because it just seems incredibly stupid. That we're going to watch this show every week as Jimmy Uso tries to claw his way back into the bloodline and impress Roman Reigns. It's almost like they pushed a button and it took us back, a year and a half. Like, what are we doing here? But the man that he wrestled in the main event tonight was AJ Styles. He wrestled AJ Styles. And I should say also, by the way, about the Bloodline story. Bloodline story is not over until Roman Reigns loses Solo Sikoa and then loses his championship. And when the day comes that Solo Sikoa finally sees Roman Reigns for who he is and what he is, and he turns his back on him or he gives him a Samoan spike, it's going to get a big reaction. Everyone's going to rejoice when Roman finally loses the championship, right? They've been building to this moment now for 3 years. It's going to be a huge moment, whether it's Cody or anybody else. It's going to be a huge moment when that finally happens. Paul Heyman at the end of SummerSlam in the little media event that they did, the press conference when the show was over, he was asked I think it was SummerSlam. He was asked a question about where do you see this Bloodline story being right now? And Paul Heyman said, we're only in the third inning of the story. Third inning of the Bloodline story. It's kind of hard to keep the game interesting when your star player barely gets any time out on the field. That's where we are right now with this Bloodline story. But to go back to AJ Styles, it was AJ Styles and Jimmy Uso in the main event of this show. This was not a good match. This was a rare misfire in a SmackDown main event. I thought the main event was fucking just boring as shit. I don't know if it was a chemistry issue between the two of them. It was slow. It was plotting. It was just not a good match. Certainly not what we know AJ Styles is capable of. But AJ Styles picked up the win. And I said this coming into the show tonight when I put the thumbnail up, as you can see. Could AJ Styles be the next opponent for Roman Reigns? AJ Styles and Roman Reigns have not clashed at all during this entire run that Roman has been on, which is pretty incredible that at no point in the last 3 years has AJ even challenged him for the championship, not even once. And you could say the same about Sheamus and Bobby Lashley. So it's not as if Roman doesn't have people that he can work with to carry him to WrestleMania and presumably a main event match with Cody Rhodes. AJ Styles hasn't done much of anything on this show in months. He had the feud with Karrion Kross, which didn't do anything for AJ, and evidently it didn't do anything for Karrion Kross either, because what really came out of that? Nothing. But he won that feud. And tonight I was happy to see him at least pick up a win over Jimmy Uso, because it gives me hope that perhaps when Roman is ready to come back, whenever the hell that's going to be, and I'm assuming he obviously is not going to be on the Fastlane pay-per-view, so the earliest we would see him is Survivor Series, and then there's no shows until the Royal Rumble. So unless they're going to keep it in the family, we're going to get Roman against Jimmy, Roman against Solo. It would be nice to see Roman work against somebody outside of his own family. I would like for AJ Styles to be that guy. We've seen them have a couple of pay-per-view matches. That was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. It's been a very long time. And I know AJ is older now. He hasn't really been doing much of anything. Roman and AJ could absolutely be a pay-per-view match. You can get a program out of that. And I'm hoping that this is sort of a tease for that. That when Roman does come back, AJ is not going to let this go. The fact that Jimmy kind of pulled his punk card last week, this week, the end of the show tonight, Solo Sikoa leaves him laying with a Samoan spike. That's my hope. But a lot of that's just going to be predicated on when Roman Reigns is going to be able to, or going to be ready to come back, and we don't know when that is. The one intriguing thing that did come out of that last segment that we had on the show tonight was the tease of some faction warfare. Because we had what was left of the Bloodline, which isn't much at this point. unless they do let Jimmy back in. It's basically just Roman and Solo. But we had the Judgment Day on the show tonight. Now that they're the undisputed tag team champions, Balor and Priest were on the show, and Dominic. And we had them going face-to-face, nose-to-nose with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. And then at the end of the show, we had the Judgment Day throwing AJ back into the ring almost as a sacrifice to the Bloodline, maybe like a peace offering. And Solo Sikoa staring down Finn Balor and Damian Priest. So this was only a first tease, I think, of what could be to come. And I don't know if they would do, for example, the first thought I had was, could they be gearing up for a War Games match? Got Survivor Series coming up. They haven't said anything about War Games being on the show this year. Could we be headed for the Judgment Day, the Bloodline, the Hurt Business, or whatever the hell they end up calling themselves? Maybe a three-way faction feud in a War Games match. See, that's intriguing to me. Even though they're all heel groups. I know people are cheering for Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, but supposedly, internally, they're listed as heels. And we'll see if it stays that way. But 3 heel factions. I don't know if War Games is what they're thinking of, but it's what I'm thinking of when this show was over tonight. So that intrigued me, because I don't know exactly where they're going to be going with that. But the next challenger for Io Sky's WWE Women's Championship, we now know who that person is going to be. And this also made me very happy. That person is going to be Asuka, the former women's champion. And in fact, their match is going to be taking place on SmackDown in 2 weeks. There was a segment on the show tonight where LA Knight confronted Paul Heyman backstage. It was brief, but again, very interesting that we had our first interaction between LA Knight and a member of the Bloodline face-to-face here on this show. And the Judgment Day threw some shade at the Bloodline as well. I mentioned that before. So we got a lot to get into. We got to get into this too. We're having a party here on the street. We're very
It's ABK. Always be killing.
You know, it's morning where ABK is. Apparently, he just woke up. So I want to wish him a good morning and a gigantic thank you for that $205 super chat. As I danced on screen for all of you, dancing more than a solid gold dancer at a club in Manhattan. Thank you, ABK. That was a nice morning bomb from you. Always good to see you with us. So let's get into this show here because there is a lot to unpack. We are about 100 subscribers away from 75,000 here on this channel. So I want to say thank you before we even get there. I want to say thank you for that. And you guys can help me get there that much quicker. Hit the sub button. Hit the like button as well. Super chats, as you can see, are open. And so if you have any comments or questions, get them on in, and I will be reading them a little bit later on. There is, of course, the new How's Your Dad? Christian Cage $5 super chat. And one thing that took place on Raw was that excellent main event, the complete and polar opposite of the main event that we got on this show tonight, between Gunther and Chad Gable. He retained his Intercontinental Championship, which meant that, of course, by the end of this week, he was going to set the all-time record, which he did. And in fact, Gunther is now the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in WWE history. Hey, Brian Musha just gifted 5 channel memberships. Thank you very much. But yes, all hail the brand new record-breaking Intercontinental Champion. They did announce tonight that on Raw this coming Monday, September 11th, there will be a record-breaking championship celebration with Gunther and the members of Imperium. And that will, I imagine, shed some light on whether or not this issue with Chad Gable is now dead and over with for now, or if they're going to go with a rematch. Not that there's a need for one storyline-wise, because Gunther beat him fair and square on Monday. But I certainly hope this is not the end of the issue between Gunther and Chad Gable. And I for one, would love to see one more match. One more match at Fastlane. Now, somebody mentioned to me, do you think it should happen at Fastlane? Does it have to happen at Fastlane? Save it for WrestleMania? I wouldn't save it for WrestleMania, because WrestleMania, Gunther should be doing something bigger than Chad Gable at WrestleMania. But I am open to the idea of maybe having the match pushed back to the Royal Rumble. And Chad Gable using these next few months, Gunther basically tells him, you want another shot at my championship, you've got to earn it. You've got to work for it. I've already beaten you. You've got to work your way back to the front of the line. And now they have the next 3 or 4 months leading into the Royal Rumble where Chad Gable can try to win and work his way back up. You do the match at the Royal Rumble. Gable wins it, hands Gunther his first loss officially by pin or submission. He could tap him out in the ankle lock. You open the show with it, and then Gunther comes back at the end and wins the Men's Royal Rumble. So even though he loses his championship, he immediately is vaulted into the position of challenging for the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania. I like that idea too, but I still want to see the match at Fastlane. I still want to see the match a lot sooner than the Royal Rumble, but I am not opposed to that idea. I love that main event on Monday night. That was one of the best matches I saw all year. And easily the best television match, I think, in WWE all year. So I hope sooner than later we get to see that again. But yes, that ceremony will be taking place on Raw this coming Monday night. Now let's talk about SmackDown here, the opening segment of tonight's show. Because SmackDown opened with Charlotte Flair.
It's the amazing Gunther.
And the amazing Gunther.
Jerry Lawler loves Gunther the Magnificent. All hail Gunther.
All hail indeed, says 0.216. How funny is that? I'm talking about the guy. His alter ego there appears on my screen. Thank you, 0 Point, for the $50 Gunther bomb. You're on a Friday night. 0 Point, you are the man. So Charlotte Flair tagged with Shotzi tonight to take on Damage CTRL, Bayley, and Io Sky. Bayley and Charlotte, who have some history together, they started the match. Things broke down very quickly. Shotzi and Charlotte went to the outside. Io hit a springboard moonsault off the second rope onto both ladies. So the show went to commercial. We were 60 seconds into this match. So what a way to start this show. 60 seconds in, we're already at a commercial. When they came back, Io had control on Shotzi and Bayley tagged in. Shotzi was not in for very long before she made the hot tag to Charlotte. She hit a series of chops to Bayley and then hit a fall-away slam. She followed that up with a fall-away slam on Io. Charlotte tried for the figure 8. Bayley rolled Charlotte up for a 2 count. And Charlotte came right back and sank in the figure 4 until Io broke it up with a running Meteora. So Bayley went to the top, but she stopped when she looked to her side. And she noticed that over by the timekeeper's area, Dakota Kai was standing there with Io's championship over her shoulder. Behind Dakota, and Dakota did not notice this, she kind of peeked her head up from behind the barricade, was Asuka, who was in her murder clown makeup. And she grabbed the women's title away from Dakota Kai. Well, this distracted Bayley up on the rope long enough for Charlotte to come in. She booted Bayley in the head and knocked her back down into the ring. And then she tagged in Shotzi, who hit her DDT finish on Bayley, and she pinned her to win the match for her team. And after the match, Asuka she got into the ring. We had a stare down between Asuka and Io. And Asuka threw the title down at Io's feet, and they stared at each other for a while until Asuka left the ring. So it was a decent match. They kept Shotzi's involvement very limited, which is for the better. But they let her get the win. I think this is her second win now over Bayley. But the real story here has nothing to do with Shotzi, or Charlotte for that matter. The real story here has to do with Asuka and Io Sky, who are going to be wrestling each other in 2 weeks. There was a couple segments later in the back, Damage CTRL was being interviewed. And Io said that she was ready for Asuka, and she said that that was a challenge for the title. So it is official. In 2 weeks on SmackDown, we are going to get, for the Women's Championship, Asuka and Io Sky one-on-one. That is the match that I have been waiting for ever since SummerSlam. So I'm very happy that they are giving it to us. But I have no idea why they're doing this on TV and not saving it for Fastlane, which is 2 weeks later. So that tells me we'll probably get a fluky finish, and we're going to end up getting it at Fastlane anyway. So that's probably going to end up being the Women's Championship match on that show as well. They have a depth issue with the women's division. They really have a depth issue with the division on both Raw and SmackDown. I think on SmackDown, it's, I don't want to say more pronounced because it's actually pretty bad on Raw. Rhea Ripley does not have a lot of challengers either. But they have a depth issue. So I don't mind them at all if they want to give us multiple matches between Asuka and Io. They want to do it in 2 weeks and give us a proper match with a bullshit finish and then do it a second time at Fastlane. And maybe give them a little more time. That's fine by me. I welcome it. Because once we exhaust that as a possibility, Asuka and Io, the only other thing that really would make sense is Asuka, or rather Io and Bayley were having some issues with each other, some communications issues, and it looked like maybe we were finally coming towards or barreling towards a Damage CTRL split. I don't know if that's still in the cards. They brought Dakota back. She's not ready to do anything physical. She's still recovering from her ACL tear. But now they have all three members of Damage CTRL back together on TV. I don't know how quickly they're going to want to break them up. But outside of eventually doing Io and Bayley, Bianca's taking some time off, which she's entitled to. She's been running pretty hard for a while. Charlotte, my thoughts on Charlotte and the women's title. Keep her far away from that championship, at least until WrestleMania season. Because by WrestleMania season, she's going to be wrestling for the title. So for the love of God, she does not need to have anything to do with that championship for the time being. And I don't know what you do with her, but that's not really my concern. All I care about is we're getting Io and Asuka, and right now that's all that matters. We got highlights from last week of AJ Styles getting up in Jimmy Uso's face when Solo Sikoa tagged him from behind. And then he stared down at Jimmy on the ground and he told him, "You're out of the bloodline when we say you're out of the bloodline." Only for Jimmy to throw up his finger in the air later in the show to show that he thinks he's still in the bloodline. So we come back live now. Paul Heyman is in the back. He's on the phone. And here's Jimmy Uso to interrupt. Jimmy points out how he's in the bloodline since nobody told him he was out. Heyman says Solo isn't here tonight, which is a lie. Roman isn't here tonight, which is the truth. And he says Jimmy is not back in until Roman says so. Heyman says Jimmy should focus on handling AJ Styles tonight. Let him work out the details as far as bringing Jimmy back in and bringing the whole family back together. So Heyman declined a handshake. He walked off. And maybe how many feet did he walk? 25 feet maybe. And he happens to stumble into who? He happens to stumble into AJ Styles, who is no fan of Paul Heyman in real life, as we know. Heyman wondered why AJ would want to mess with him. Styles grabbed him by the shirt. He pushed him backwards into some equipment. Jimmy showed back up. He pulled AJ off of Heyman, threw him over some equipment cases. And Jimmy smiled at Heyman, and he told him that he would take care of his AJ Styles problem later tonight. He walked off. And Heyman told his phone to call Roman Reigns. All these phone calls to Roman Reigns. Is he just sitting there watching the show? He's never on the shows. If I were him, is he on vacation somewhere? Right? He talks about this island that he's always on. Seems to always be available whenever Paul Heyman calls him. He's just sitting at home watching SmackDown. How come he can't be on the show? Then we had LA Knight's music hit, and Boston came alive. As soon as they hit the first chord for his music, this crowd went nuts. They went nuts for the megastar, who is said to be in line for a mega push now that he has signed a brand new long-term contract. Those are the reports going around. It could be as long as 5 years. They have locked up LA Knight. He's not going anywhere for a while. Even when he got in the ring and they turned his music off, this crowd was electric. He asked if everybody saw Miz's scintillating performance on Raw, and they booed. He asked how does Miz's song go, "I Came to Play"? And he said, now, if I was a complete moron, I'd say, let's look at that adjective. But I'm not a moron, so I'm going to say, let's look at that verb. Play. I picked up on that right away. I picked up on the Kevin Nash shade instantly. Obviously, if you are a newer fan, you would not have made the connection. Clearly, the crowd in Boston did not make the connection because there was no reaction to that line. But I knew exactly what it was, and I knew why he put it in there. For those who don't know, I think most people in this chat probably do, but for those who don't know, when Kevin Nash debuted as himself on WCW Monday Nitro at the start of the whole NWO angle back in '96, he showed up to confront Eric Bischoff at the announce booth, and he famously told Eric Bischoff, so this is where the big boys play, huh? Because WCW used to be where the big boys play. He said, let's look at the adjective, play. And he has not lived that down ever since. Now, why would he bring this up? Nash on his podcast only a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, he was talking about LA Knight, and he says he doesn't get LA Knight. He says he looks at LA Knight as a total ripoff of Stone Cold and The Rock. And so he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. And then he made the comment about how this guy didn't get over anywhere else. And if you don't get over in 3 years, it's probably never going to happen. I look out at these crowds every single week. I look at this crowd in Boston tonight. It looks to me like he's pretty fucking over. And Nash is not totally wrong when he makes the comparisons. Well, we've talked about this already. The Austin and Rock comparisons. I was making those comparisons when he was still Eli Drake back in the NWA. When he would cut promos and stuff, I couldn't help it. Like, I heard Steve Austin just in his inflection, the way he speaks. So it's not that the comparisons to those guys aren't warranted, but just the way, and I watched the clip and I listened to what he had to say at the time, and it was just kind of the flippant way, like, oh, this guy, he's just a total ripoff. If The Rock was a white guy, he was joking. He goes, and finally, LA Knight has come back, and so the way he just sort of dismissed him. Clearly, it irritated LA Knight, and this was, I guess, his receipt back to Kevin Nash. So that was what the reference was for. So he said, I didn't come here to play. I came here to walk straight to the damn top, and anybody who stands in my way, you already got a little taste of it. He's talking about The Miz. But here you are, 1 week you play dress up, the next week you play make-believe with an invisible man, an invisible John Cena, and you whine and you cry and you say LA Knight won because of John Cena in their match at Payback. He goes, here's the deal. I didn't ask for John Cena. I didn't need John Cena. I don't need John Cena's endorsement. He says, I endorse myself to stand right here. So that can chap your keister and it can be a bitter pill for you to swallow, but swallow it you will. But if you want to be a little cockroach that gets stomped on again, then consider your challenge. And then before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Grayson Waller. Came out on stage, and he asked if Knight is sure that's a good idea. And before Knight gets ahead of himself, he said he should focus on Austin Theory, and that brought out Theory, who was wrestling Knight on this show. Waller says that he and Theory are the only undefeated tag team on the roster, and they could be the greatest tag team of all time. Knight responded by telling them to talk to their mommy, and when they do, tell him I said hi. Theory noted that he beat both John Cena and LA Knight previously. Theory reminded everyone at 26 years old, he's a two-time United States champion. Yes, he is a two-time United States champion. He is a two-time United States champion that these people in this building on this show, they could not possibly have cared any less about anything this man said in his promo. Just could not give a flying fuck what Austin Theory had to say. Grayson Waller gets way more heat than Austin Theory does. So Knight says that Theory and Waller are cute together, but if they're done boring everyone, he's willing to show these incels how it's done. He mocked Waller as a mushmouth, Theory as a cross-eyed half-wit, but he said he'll fight both of those crotch goblins tonight. You got to be careful here. He's crossing over into Rock territory with these lame terms here. He called them crotch goblins. And then he said, he did his catchphrase. Everybody chanted along to his catchphrase. So this was fun. It was a fine little promo here. And the fans ate it up. Now, after a commercial break, we had LA Knight one-on-one with Austin Theory. Grayson Waller sat in on commentary and announced that John Cena will be his guest on the Grayson Waller Effect on SmackDown next Friday, because Cena was in India today. This is the first time that John Cena has ever wrestled in India. They had the Superstar Spectacle show. It was with the Raw roster, but John Cena went with them. And he tagged with Seth Rollins in the main event against Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. And it did not air. I had a couple of people wondering if I was going to review it. It did not air on Peacock. At least not here in the States. It did not air on Peacock. It was a television special in India. It was done for the people over there in India. But that is where John Cena was tonight. He'll be back on the show next week. And I wonder now, if you remember the match that I talked about, if they were going to set up for a tag team match. Because we had Cody on the Grayson Waller Effect at Payback. Now we're getting John Cena on the Grayson Waller Effect next week. And I thought maybe as a TV match, we might get Cena and Cody as partners against Theory and Waller. And they could do it at Fastlane, too. It doesn't even have to be on TV. They could do that at the next pay-per-view. So I wonder if this segment next week is going to somehow... Now, Cody is not yet... Could come over in that trade. But he is not yet officially on SmackDown. So it could just as easily be John Cena and LA Knight against Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. In fact, based on what they did here on this show, that would make more sense. But that'll be next week. So Theory hit a draping neck breaker on Knight from the apron to the floor. Knight was in control, though, when the show came back from commercial. Did not last long. Theory landed a rolling blockbuster. They spilled outside again. Theory hit a snap suplex on the floor. Waller jumped up on the apron on the opposite side of the ring to pull off the turnbuckle pad. Knight landed a power slam back in the ring. He fired up the crowd. He landed his standing leaping elbow drop. Waller got back on the apron at that point for the distraction, but it backfired as Theory almost got shoved into the exposed buckle. He was able to hit the brakes just in time, but when he turned around, LA Knight dropped him with the BFT, and he gave the 1-2-3. So LA Knight picks up the win. Solid match. It was better than the opener, but no great shakes. But the fans were into everything LA Knight did. It's funny to me when I do see people telling me, oh, he's... Because with this news about the contract, some of the stuff I saw like on Twitter, you know, he's a one-trick pony, and, you know, he's never going to last. He's a flash in the pan. His ring work is boring and all this other stuff. If you look at the way that these crowds, and these are some big cities, right? Tonight it was Boston. Remember the reaction he got when they were in New York City at Madison Square Garden? This has been going on for months now. And it seems to only be growing. Apparently his segments on TV do good numbers. His merch, he's the #1 merch seller. Like, all the boxes that you would check, he checks them right now. And there are still people who think that it's not going to last. I don't think they would have locked him up to a long-term deal and would be putting him in the position he's in if they felt that it was going to be over in 3 months. They're making a real investment in him, which is great to see, because think of where he was a year ago at this time. They're making a real, genuine investment in this guy. And ultimately, it's going to be up to him. You know, does the crowd burn out on him? Does he get hurt? Hopefully not. Hopefully his body holds up. Hopefully he keeps getting these reactions. If he does, it's going to make WrestleMania season very interesting, because what do you do with LA Knight? You know, is he just wrestling for the United States Championship, depending on who's holding it at the time? You know, the idea of doing LA Knight and Roman Reigns, I can't see it, because I think that story is set with Roman and Cody, going back to what they did this year, which, by the way, it seems like with these shows, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, when I made the comments about the Bloodline story, I look back on some of the things that I said at that time, and boy, I think I was making quite a bit of sense at that time, even though there were some people who were disagreeing with me. When I said at WrestleMania, they made a big mistake by having Roman Reigns beat Cody Rhodes. I feel the same way now that I did back in April, on the night that I said it. But that was the choice they made. So now Roman and Cody is probably going to be the story at 40, but you know, I don't know. If LA Knight continues to sustain these kinds of reactions, and apparently he's positioned now as the #1 babyface on SmackDown. PW Insider said that that is internally where he is now slotted. If he's the number one babyface on this show, and Roman Reigns is the champion and the number one heel, we're in September. How are you going to get to April and not have your number one heel and your number one babyface cross paths at some point? Or maybe they will, and they'll just have Roman beat him. But I that's one of the big questions I have. One of the big question marks going into WrestleMania season next year is going to revolve around LA Knight. Because right now, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do with him. As far as, Knight working another match with The Miz, it feels to me like he's just spinning his wheels. There's no need to see this match again. They really impressed me with their promo work heading into the match they had at Payback. They had some very enjoyable segments on TV. I think it helped Miz step his game up in a way that he hasn't this year. But they did the match. We all knew LA Knight was going to win, and he did. And now they're just going back to it again. And there are some matches that I like seeing more than once, and then there are other matches I look at, and this is one of them where I'm like, there's no need for me to see this a second time. There really isn't. There's no need for me to see this again. But this is what they do. This is what WWE does. We usually end up getting 2 or 3 of these. They're going to do the same thing with Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura. He beat Nakamura at Payback. I didn't think the match was all that great. Now they're going to run it back again. Why? Well, because that's what they do. Now, Gunther and Chad Gable, that's a match I would love to see again, even though he got beat fair and square. But it was so great. I mean, how could you not want to see those two get back in the ring one more time? Plus, there's a story there. There's a story there where I think a lot of people want to see him win or try to win that championship. How could you not? If you look at that promo they put on their YouTube channel after Raw Monday night, where Gable's in the back and he's, unlacing his boots, and he's just deathly serious, talking about how, I swear to God, I'm going to win that championship. He's sitting there going, yeah, the SHOOSH and the thank you and all that's really fun, but when I look over and I see my little girl crying her eyes out in the front row, that's not cool to me. And he swears to us, he swears to everybody, I swear to God, I'm going to win that title. How could you not want to see him win that championship? That's a match I'd like to see again. These other matches, I have no interest in seeing them again. To the back, Paul Heyman was talking to Adam Pearce, and he wanted to know who SmackDown was receiving after Jey Uso was traded to Monday Night Raw. We still don't know who. He would not divulge that information. And they can drag this out for a while. I mean, there's nothing that says we need to find out who SmackDown is going to get this month. Like, we may not find out until next month. There's no rush. There's no deadline. It's not like there's rules for this. They've never established rules for trades. You have to announce something within a week. They can announce it whenever they want. I still say it's going to be Cody. But I don't think they're going to announce that so soon. LA Knight walks in. There he is again. He's all over the show. He walks in, and he asks Adam Pearce to make the match, him against Miz, which Pearce did. He made it for next Friday, so they're not even waiting until Fastlane. They're going to do it on TV next week. Paul Heyman looks over at LA Knight, and he starts smiling. And he says, I don't think we've been introduced. I'm a huge admirer of yours. And then he turned serious. And so he was buttering him up so he could tell him, the next time you see me in this office taking care of business, basically don't walk in and interrupt him. Knock on the door next time you want to come in. And Knight gets up real close in his face when Heyman asks him if he understands him, and Knight says, yeah. And Heyman walked off. That is an interesting little interaction there. It actually piggybacks off what I was just talking about as far as WrestleMania season. What do you do with LA Knight? This is the first time we've seen LA Knight interacting with any of the Bloodline. And so it was an interesting tease. I don't know if they have something in mind, specifically with him and Roman Reigns. In some ways, it does feel too soon to be thinking about that, but this is September. In January, in March, it may not feel so soon. So they're going to have some questions to sort through. What do you do with this guy? What do you do with Drew McIntyre, who still has not signed his new contract? What do you do with him? What do you do? I mean, there's a few people that I think fall into that category. Knight is the most over among them, though. So I think he's going to be probably the number one priority of those people that don't have an obvious spot right now on that WrestleMania card. You got two Knights. So, I mean, you can fit him into a pretty prominent position on the card, one of the two Knights. I don't see it being for a world championship. So I could see something on the U.S. title level for him. Maybe him and Escobar, if Escobar wins the belt between now and then, which I think he will. No movement on that story, by the way, tonight. Nothing new on the whole LWO front. Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar, they were not there. Finn Balor and Damian Priest were there, along with Dominic Mysterio. No Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley was not on the show. She was also in India earlier. She was defending her championship against Natalya because Becky Lynch was denied entry. Not only denied entry into the country, she never left this country. She was not allowed to board her flight to go to India because when she got to the airport, there was a little tear in her passport and they would not allow her to fly. Which I guess is better than her flying all the way over there and then getting to the airport there and having issues and having to turn right back around and fly home. But that's pretty shitty because she was advertised for the show and apparently there were a lot of fans who were very upset and disappointed that she was not there. But that is why Natty had to pull double duty. She wrestled Zoe Stark and then she wrestled Rhea Ripley later on in the show. Maybe she can get a Guinness World Record for that too, since she's already won 6 of them. She can get a Guinness World Record for being the first woman to wrestle 2 matches in one night for WWE in India. Give her another one. It can make up a few more awards for her. So Priest told the crowd to all rise for the crew that has all the gold, and I feel obligated to keep pointing out that it's silver. It's gold and silver. I mean, am I the only one here who's not blind? They did this on Monday too. If you insist on having nickels for championship belts, then it's gold and silver. Finn Balor introduced himself as Grand Slam Finn. Balor introduced Dirty Dom, and the crowd booed. And Dominic tried to speak, but the combination of real and artificial noise drowned him out to where it was very difficult to hear what he was saying. And it's comical to me because the artificial sound that they very clearly pipe in for his reactions, as soon as somebody else goes to speak, in this case it was Damian Priest, magically the audio instantly turns down. Like if it was all legitimate, like it would gradually sort of taper off maybe. Nope, it's like he starts speaking and all of a sudden it's like someone turns the knob and like down it goes. So Priest says they did something even the Bloodline couldn't do, something Roman Reigns could not do. They beat Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and took the tag team titles away from them. And they were interrupted by Butch and Ridge Holland. Holland said they were looking to put on a banger in Beantown. And it was Butch, not him, that they had to worry about. And Balor started laughing until Butch grabbed his fingers and snapped them. And the Brutes shot Balor into the ropes. Balor, though, rolled to the floor. And at that point, the show went to commercial. White gold? Are you trying to tell me those belts are white gold? No. My eyes don't deceive me. Those are silver titles, and you will never convince me otherwise. It's like the ECW title. When they had the ECW World title in WWE's version of ECW, that was a silver belt. So after the break, we got Finn Balor and Damian Priest against the Brawling Brutes. Michael Cole on commentary. The real news here was like 2 seconds, and he moved on from it, but he mentioned on commentary that Sheamus is injured. Gave no details, gave no specifics, and just moved on. So hopefully it's nothing serious. That's the first I'm hearing about Sheamus being hurt. The match was joined in progress. Ridge fired up. He had both Balor and Priest on each shoulder and slammed them down. Priest came right back with a clothesline. Balor tagged in. They showed Pretty Deadly in the back. They were watching on TV. The injured one, the blonde one, was sitting in his wheelchair. Holland got the hot tag to Butch, who landed a moonsault on both Priest and Balor on the floor, and the show went to another commercial. He landed directly on top of Damien's head, which was very scary. But thankfully, he was okay. Coming back, Butch hit a superplex on Balor. Balor and Butch, they ended up the legal men. Dominic got involved. Butch went to go do the 10 beats to Dom. Balor, though, interrupted that with a sling blade. He went up for the double stomp. Butch moved out of the way, though. Balor hit an enziguri before tagging in Damian Priest. And Butch tagged in Ridge, who lifted Priest. And Butch went to the top. Balor pushed Butch off. Priest landed a South of Heaven chokeslam on Holland and Butch. Finn Balor went up to the top. He hit the coup de grace on Holland, and that was enough for Finn Balor to get the pin. I believe this was non-title, but Judgment Day pick up a win. After the match, Bobby Lashley's music hits. He comes out dressed to the nines. Montez Ford, Angelo Dawkins, also dressed in suits. They all walk to the ring, and we got a three-way stare down. We had the members of the Judgment Day and the members of whatever the hell this group is calling themselves. Apparently, they still don't have a name. Bobby Lashley said that the Bloodline is crumbling, but it will not be the Judgment Day that takes over. It's going to be the three of them. I'm assuming that's not their new name, the three of them. That doesn't really roll off the tongue. I don't think you would put the three of them on a t-shirt. So they are still the group with no name. I will call them the Hurt Business because until I'm told otherwise, they're just the new Hurt Business to me. Because I like that name. And since they refuse to bring back the original Hurt Business, I will use that name until they come up with a name of their own. So that was a cool little tease of some faction warfare. But as I said at the beginning of the stream, all three of the factions that kind of interacted or were mentioned tonight, they're all heels. The Lashley crew, they're supposed to be heels, even if the fans are cheering them. Judgment Day are heels, Bloodline are heels. They have another trio, Brawling Brutes. They're baby faces, but they're not involved in this. Damage CTRL, another trio. They're also not involved in this. But anyway, we'll see. This whole idea, I just think War Games automatically, just because we're heading into Survivor Series. I don't know if that's the idea. But I'm down for some faction warfare if they tell that story the right way. But you got to get Roman back on TV. This doesn't work if Roman Reigns is in absentia on the show. He's got to be coming back, or else that wouldn't work. And as it stands now, the Bloodline is only two people. So you would have to get Jimmy Uso back in, so that way you get a third guy. Because Paul Heyman ain't putting on the tights. And if Paul Heyman is putting on a pair of tights, I'm not watching that show. Backstage, Anderson, Gallows, Michin. They were shown watching a video on, I think it was Anderson's phone, and they were laughing and they were having fun. AJ Styles was not having fun. He was not laughing. He walked into camera view. He asked the Good Brothers about Jimmy jumping him earlier. And Styles knocked the phone out of Anderson's hand, and it crashed on the floor. And Anderson, I guess he was upset they didn't have his back. And Anderson reminded AJ that he told him last week, don't get involved, don't mess with the Bloodline. And AJ told them he didn't want them anywhere near his match with Jimmy, which was coming up next. And that was the main event of this show. It was AJ Styles one-on-one with Jimmy Uso. Jimmy had to win in order to get back in the good graces of Roman Reigns. And I'll say it again, what are we even doing here? That we are watching Jimmy Uso after everything else that he has been through and that we have seen in the last several months is now fighting to get back into the good graces of Roman Reigns. Like, what are we even doing here? This was very slow and very boring. Styles had control early. Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa, who Heyman said wasn't there, magically appeared. They walked out on stage. Jimmy smiled when he saw this because he thought that was a good thing. And he slammed AJ's head off the ring steps. The camera showed him smiling as the show cut to the final break. Back from that break, Jimmy had control. He landed a hip attack on AJ in the corner. And then he worked the always exciting chin lock, my favorite hold. Styles tried to elbow his way out of it, but Jimmy cut him off with a clothesline and went back to the chin lock. Styles countered with a belly-to-back suplex from their knees. They started trading slaps. Styles eventually hit a Pele kick, clothesline Jimmy over the top rope, and followed that with a leaping forearm. Inside the ring, Styles set up for the phenomenal forearm, but Jimmy moved. They traded strikes until AJ hit a DDT. Styles went to the apron, but Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa distracted him. That was enough for Jimmy to hit a super kick. So now Styles is on the outside. And Jimmy rolled out with him. And Jimmy tried to go talk to Solo, but Solo turned his back. Turned around. Turned his back on his brother. Styles hit Jimmy and Solo. Styles then confronted Paul Heyman. He ran Jimmy into the ring post when he came back at him. From there, Styles hit the phenomenal forearm on Jimmy, and he pinned him. And I was happy to see that, because I do have hopes that we will get a Roman Reigns AJ Styles match. I still believe that AJ has a great title match, a great main event on a pay-per-view left in him, even though they haven't given him much to do in probably the last 2 years. So I was happy that he won, and it wasn't just them feeding a win to Jimmy. After the match, Damian Priest and Finn Balor attacked AJ. They threw him back into the ring, almost like a peace offering to the Bloodline. They threw him back inside at the feet of Solo Sikoa, who stared at them outside and didn't really know what to make of this. He was very confused. But he picked up AJ, he dropped him with a Samoan spike, and then he just stared at Priest and Balor, who looked at each other on the outside, and they smirked. So obviously they had something going on up here. They had a reason for doing what they did. There's some method to the madness. And AJ did tell the OC not to come out and help him, so there was no Anderson, there was no Gallows. The main event, it was very strange. It dragged, and it was probably the worst thing on the entire show. And so given who was involved, especially AJ, that's surprising, but a very dull, just a very crappy main event on this show. A rare misfire for a SmackDown main event. I didn't think this was a good match at all. But it was intriguing now. We wait and find out what the Judgment Day and the Bloodline may or may not do together. This felt like a seed being planted for something. I don't know exactly what or when. But it was the only intriguing thing about anything involving the Bloodline tonight for me. This stuff with Jimmy, again, even if it turns out to be a ruse of some kind and he's trying to worm his way back in to try to... I think about, okay, if Jimmy is trying to work an angle of his own here, and he's trying to get back into the good graces of Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, it's possible that he could be trying to do for Solo what he did for Jay. Because Solo's his brother too. He's his little brother. Solo is the one loyal believer that's left in that group who has not left the side of Roman Reigns. Maybe Jimmy wants to get back on the inside so he can bring Solo out with him. That's just me freestyling and trying to make this make sense in some way. And maybe 3 months from now, I'll look back on this and it'll all make sense. But right now, this story doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it just feels to me like because Roman Reigns is not around to fill in the gaps on TV and has no presence on the actual show, well, we got to go with Jimmy. And what else are we going to do with Jimmy? We don't want to go to Jimmy and Jay, so they moved Jay to Raw. They want to do Jimmy and Jay at WrestleMania. Well, WrestleMania is still a ways off. So if you don't want to do the match now, well, then what the hell do you do with Jimmy? This is what we end up with. This is the part of the Bloodline story now that really since SummerSlam, it's been over a month, is just sort of dragging along. The Bloodline used to be what carried SmackDown. And now you're starting to really see some of the weaknesses on this show now that top story they've been able to rely on and lean on for so long isn't really firing on all cylinders. I don't know. Maybe some people are watching this and they're just as intrigued. If they are, hey, more power to you. I am just fucking bored right now by this story. And it doesn't help that Roman Reigns is not on the show. So until we get him back, I don't see any major developments in this story. And I don't know when he's going to be back. But the idea of feuding these factions together, that I find intriguing. So we'll see what final form that takes. But the LA Knight Miz match is on the show next Friday. The women's title match is on the show in 2 weeks. And I will be live for that. I will not be live for the show next week because there's a House of Glory show. So there won't be a SmackDown review next week. But that will be the show where John Cena is back and they do the LA Knight Miz rematch that I'm sure you're all clamoring to see. SmackDown tonight got a 59% thumbs up rating from you guys so far. These are the live results in real time. 41% thumbs down. So a positive score, about 60% thumbs up. Not an overwhelmingly positive score, but that is a positive score. And now we get to your messages here and your questions. Your questions and your comments about this show tonight. See what you guys thought of SmackDown and what you think of some of these faction teases that we got. Lady Fire Panda hit me with the $20. Hit me right in the face. I hope everyone is doing well and you are taking care of yourselves. Please know that even when it doesn't feel like it, you matter to someone. You are not alone in life. That is a very true message. I hope that message resonates with people. I don't know what that means as far as Fire Panda goes. I hope everything is okay with you. But, those are some wise words. Jamie Dorsch with the $10 super chat. Will we ever see a WrestleMania 28 scenario where the main event of WrestleMania is announced 1 year in advance? Keep up the hard work. I think at some point we'll see that again. Doesn't happen very often, but it will happen again at some point. When they have a big enough match to announce a year in advance, they'll do it. You know, it's a little bit different now that they have 2 nights of WrestleMania instead of 1. The last time they did that was Cena and Rock, and back then WrestleMania was only 1 night. So you announce something a year in advance, you don't necessarily announce which night it's going to air. But yeah, I think we'll see that at some point. Dick the Cock Johnson, it's safe to say the Bloodline jumped the shark. Chris AXC, what do you think the path from here to WrestleMania will look like and ultimately lead to for LA Knight? We talked about that already. I don't know what they're going to do with him. He's got a few different paths. I don't see Roman Reigns being realistic. I just don't think the timing is going to work out for him as far as that goes. But I do see him ending up with championship gold of some kind. Since he's on SmackDown, that would probably be the US title. Says, how about that Ricky Starks promo on Wednesday? Goosebumps. Ricky is just ready to break out. I mean, Ricky, we already know Ricky can talk. And then he put the work in that strap match. My God, did he take a fucking beating in that strap match at All Out? But that promo on Wednesday that they aired on the show was fantastic. And if he isn't one of the top faces that we see on Collision going forward, then I think that's a big mistake. Lady Fire Panda says, if they were dropped into today's WWE as rookies, who would fail the most and who would succeed the most? Between Batista, Randy Orton, John Cena, and Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is always going to succeed. I mean, you look at Brock, he's an athletic freak. Even at his age now, he was an athletic freak in his 20s, and he's still a freak. Brock Lesnar would be a world champion, no questions asked, whether it's 20 years ago or today. Randy Orton would succeed as well. I'd put him right behind Brock, just because he had that look. His ring work is... Everybody who's worked with him has nothing but positive things to say about his in-ring work. So I think they would recognize in-ring his talent, and he would get over just fine. And then Cena... Honestly, I think they all would succeed. I just don't know that you would have Cena succeeding at the same level, because he almost got fired the first time. So, you know, Cena, maybe I would actually put Cena on the bottom, just because I don't know what they would have him doing, if they would see it right away or not. And if they don't, you know, it'd be very easy for him to get pushed down the card. Batista has the size, although he's not as big now as he was back then. If Batista back then, though, came along now, he would get a shot just for his look alone. But I can't sit here and tell you that I think either one of those two would have the guaranteed success that Brock and Randy Orton would have. The real CSO2. The Jimmy Uso stuff just screams Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, the last thing Vince McMahon wants is this Bloodline story to end. I mean, this Bloodline story is... I mean, it's been their top story for so long. You know, they're going to drag this out as long as they can until Roman loses the championship. If Roman's not losing until WrestleMania, you can't end the Bloodline story. So this is what they're coming up with now to try to drag the story out as long as possible. Hey, Sonic Youth, thank you, man. Appreciate that. $10 super chat. Says, you're the man, Solo. ABK with the $200 bomb says, good morning, guys. Everybody wish a good morning to our friend ABK. 0 Point. Thank you for the $50 Gunther. Austin Blanchett. I believe that AJ Styles is the most overlooked and underappreciated legend on the roster. He is top 10 all time. He had Undertaker's last March. And his last match. There's more that AJ can be offering right now than what they're utilizing it for. Underutilized, I think, is the perfect word right now for AJ Styles. Underappreciated is also, I think, also accurate. Citizen Image. The Citizen Image. Thank you for the sub. Who's going to be number 75,000? I don't know. We're getting pretty close, though. Could be you. Aussie of Steel, considering all he has accomplished, would you say that Kevin Owens is the greatest and most successful NXT call-up of all time? Well, I don't have the full list of NXT call-ups in front of me. I know he didn't spend that much time in NXT. I think he debuted in December, and by March, I want to say he was called up. Say, not March, I'm sorry, May, when he worked with John Cena. So I don't even think he spent a full 6 months in NXT. Would he be the most successful of all the call-ups? Probably. Again, I don't have the full list in front of me. Like a Bray Wyatt got called up, right? He was in NXT. Although his time probably I guess his time would have started probably in FCW, not NXT. Because he worked WrestleMania matches with Cena and Undertaker. He did that segment with Rock. He defended the championship against, Randy Orton. So he had a lot of big moments on the main roster as well. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Owens. The only reason I wouldn't say Seth Rollins is just because he technically started in FCW. Although he was the first NXT champion. So depending on how you look at it, if you consider Seth to be an NXT guy, then it would be Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns, same thing. So I guess if we're going to consider Seth an NXT guy, how do you not consider Roman Reigns an NXT guy? He was there those early days of NXT at Full Sail. He was coming out as Roman Reigns. So how do you judge that? Who do you consider an NXT guy? If that's the case, then you got to go with Roman. Roman, Seth, Kevin Owens. Those might be the top three.
Look at Richie Rich over here dropping all this money on me. Hey, I just want you to know, I think you rock. I don't mean The Rock, A-Rock, you rock. And I just wanted you to know that.
It's ABK. Always be killing
it. ABK wasn't done yet. ABK said, I will drop another $100 super chat on you and say happy birthday to Manuel Macias. Hey, Manuel, you're getting a happy birthday shout out from ABK. It's like getting a happy birthday shout out from royalty. ABK, thank you very much. $100 super chat. Amazing. Love Lie. I'm listening to this while unadding a bunch of people. And how's your night been? unadding a bunch of people on what? Facebook? Twitter? Instagram? You got to be specific. Slim Yoshi with the $10 super chat. My night's been good, by the way. Thank you for asking. Has there ever been a wrestler in WWE or another promotion where you felt he is the guy and then proceeds to have a match, a segment, or a promo that made you go, he is not the guy, aka I'm not him? So someone who I thought was the guy, but I was wrong, and he was not the guy. No, I don't think so. I'm usually pretty accurate when it comes to this thing. I'm trying to think of other promotions outside of WWE where maybe I would have thought that. I don't know, but you know who I used to watch and I thought, man, this guy could be a world champion one day, and I think he would have been, but he never had the chance because he had to leave the wrestling business, is Monty Brown. I don't know how big of a star he would have gone on to become if he would have ended up in WWE. He had a lot of charisma. Monty Brown would have been a lot bigger had he not had to retire. God of Seduction with the $25 Brie mode has activated Brie mode on all of us. Has unleashed, like the Kraken, has unleashed Brie mode on each and every one of us. That's a good question, though. Has there been someone who looked like... You know what? I'll give you one. I'll give you one right now. Ken Kennedy. I looked at Ken... I don't want to say that I looked at Ken Kennedy and I said, oh, that's the guy. But when Kennedy was first being pushed and was first getting over, I thought for sure this guy's going to end up being a main event player. He's going to end up being a world heavyweight champion. And it didn't happen. And honestly, to your point, the more that I watched him in the ring, that was part of it. It wasn't just that he fucked up, but I would watch him and there were those moments, and it's part of the reason why he ended up getting booted from the company, because, you know, he hurt Randy Orton in that match. There were other wrestlers who went to management and complained about him, Shawn Michaels, John Cena. And I said, he's not the guy. But I thought he could be. I thought he could be one of the guys in that company, and it just didn't work out. So yeah, I'd go with Kennedy. Kennedy, man, he would have been Mr. McMahon's illegitimate bastard son. And who knows where that would have taken him. He had the Money in the Bank briefcase. He would have cashed in and probably won the championship if he didn't get hurt. You know that whole story. Won the Money in the Bank briefcase, was going to cash in at WrestleMania the following year. I think he was going to have like a countdown and everything. And, or at least that's what they said. I think he probably would have cashed in a lot sooner. But he got hurt, and they thought he tore his bicep or tore some kind of muscle in his arm. And they got the briefcase off of him. I think he just lost it to Edge in a match on TV, and it turned out it was like a bone bruise, and he was able to come back in a matter of weeks. Meanwhile, they took the briefcase off of him. Edge took the case, and he ended up cashing in on The Undertaker, who I think had a torn bicep of his own, and he won the championship. So there were different moments in Kennedy's run in that company where sometimes just it was sheer bad luck. He got fucked over, and who knows? Who knows how high up he would have gone. But I think he definitely would have ended up as a world heavyweight champion. And would he have been able to stay there in that position? Probably not. Will Chisholm. LA Knight gets a new deal, and WWE is already teasing a program with Roman at some point. Yeah, I don't think that was a coincidence. Dr. Bropio. Hey, M-Sun, you know, that it's a good one. He mentions Wardlow, to go back to the other question about someone that you looked at and said, okay, this is the guy, and then it turns out not to be the guy. But see, that has nothing to do with Wardlow's work, though. That's strictly a case of just the booking absolutely just killed him dead. I mean, that's on Tony Khan and the company. I don't know how they fucked up Wardlow. I really don't. I mean, he should have been a sure thing for them, and he is absolutely just completely stone cold dead. And it doesn't mean they can't try to start all over again with him. I don't think you're ever going to recapture that magic again. He'd have to leave and go somewhere else and get a fresh start Honestly, maybe in WWE. I don't see how Tony Khan is ever going to be able to recapture the kind of lightning in a bottle they had for a while with Wardlow. They just totally dropped the ball with it. It's actually quite amazing to look back on it and see how badly they fucked up. Dr. Bropio says, what about just 3 guys for Bobby's group? Instead of just 5 guys? Instead of just 5 guys in New Japan, we have just 3 guys in WWE? Jack Dude Brother with the $2 says, I told Solo to be a podcaster. No lies, brother. Oh, Hulk. Hulk is at it again, telling tall tales. Thank you, Jack Dude Brother. It's actually Brother Jack Dude, but I'll let it slide. Krauser. Tag belts went from gold to copper to silver. Rest in peace. That's true. They went from gold. That actually is quite accurate. They went from gold, copper to silver. So what's next? Topaz? We're gonna have some Topaz belts. Meet HVNCHO. How's everyone's father doing tonight? That's what Christian wants to know. Thank you, Christian. Manuel, tomorrow is my 24th birthday. Can our members sing for me or you? Greatly appreciated. Also, can we go bowling now? Finally, Solomonster. LOL, love the chat. I don't think anything I can say or do will top ABK dropping a super chat and then dedicating his message to you for your birthday. So I think you should just take that as top prize and just run with it, because it doesn't really get any better than that. But I will wish you a very happy birthday. I hope that it is a great 24th birthday. I hope that you get everything you are looking for. ABK is going to fly out to wherever you are. He's going to roll out the red carpet for you. He's going to take you on an all-expense paid trip to some tropical island somewhere. He's going to have beautiful women waiting for you to dangle grapes over your face and feed them to you. Then I'll pop out of a cake and I'll sing your birthday song for you. How's that sound? ABK, there it is. Thank you for the honey bomb. Says happy birthday to Manuel. God of Seduction. Who would you pick to form a modern day 2-man power trip in AEW and WWE? I think I would go Brock and Roman and MJF and Cage. Says whoop that trick. Talking about Brian Cage? Nah, I wouldn't do that. 2-man power trip in WWE. Roman Reigns would have to be one of them, right? Because you got to have your top champion in there. Roman Reigns in a 2-man power trip with, I don't know, Drew McIntyre maybe? If Drew went heel, which I think he probably will soon. Roman and, I don't know, Roman and Drew, two of the bigger guys on the roster. Actually, you know what? He's not around. Neither one of them are around long enough to really make it work. If you wanted a real 2-man power trip in that company, given their history together, you would go Roman and Brock. Stone Cold and Triple H had a lot of history together when they got paired up, right? They were mortal enemies. Triple H tried to run him over and kill him with a car, and they ended up being the 2-man power trip. So if they can put their differences aside, then Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar can put theirs aside. And the best part about that, it would mean that we don't get a Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar match, since they would be partners. The only problem is, how often would we actually see them on TV together? Probably not very often. HBKC83, do you think Alex Riley was a victim of booking malpractice? No, I think Alex Riley was a victim in part of politics behind the scenes. And I know he had heat with John Cena, which probably did him in. And he was also a victim, I think, of his own circumstances. Krauser, Bobby Roode has so much potential. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Bobby Roode is closing in soon on 50 years old, and he has a surgically repaired neck. So if you are waiting for the big Bobby Roode push, I would not be holding my breath. Right now, he is doing producing behind the scenes for them. Jonathan Coleman, who is the better actor, John Cena or Batista? Batista. I think Batista has the best acting range between him, Cena, and Rock. Rock is the most successful crossover talent. He's probably the biggest star in Hollywood. John Cena is killing it with all these different projects that he's working on. Batista is the best actor of the bunch. God of Seduction, Santino should have won the Chamber. That was 2012. I think I felt the same way at the time. That's what everybody in the building wanted.
Look, everyone, it's
Samoa Bro. Samoa Bro from our boy Meat Huncho. It's Honcho. Well, why is there a V there? If it's Honcho, it should be Meat Honcho. Meat Honcho, thank you for the 1999. He says, I've been listening to your podcast only a couple of months now, and I have been going down the rabbit hole and listening to all of your reviews and live streams. Continue preaching facts, brother. Thank you. I will continue to preach, even for the people who don't want to hear it. Too bad. But you got a lot of content to go through, man. So I thank you for that very much. I appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy all the content, because there's plenty of it. I feel like in the last 2 weeks alone, I've put out more content than I need to for an entire month. Boney with the 5. I always forget main event exists. Why does WWE not advertise it on Raw or SmackDown? Use that to push people they don't have plans for at the moment. Because it's not a priority. It's not a priority. I used to say that about the WWE Network when the network first launched. And occasionally, maybe they would mention something, but it's like, why wouldn't, coming out of a commercial break, why wouldn't you have like a 30 or 60 second spotlight of a classic match and say, these episodes just dropped this week on the network? Because apparently that stuff doesn't sell. They don't think people give a shit about it. It doesn't do big numbers for them. But yet there's this treasure trove of classic content. They have all of these libraries that they paid for, and they snatched up, and they have episodes of all these different promotions, and you would never know it exists because they never talk about it. You have to be a hardcore, diehard fan and know what websites to follow or what Twitter accounts to follow that give you updates on what Peacock uploads to the network. Like classic episodes of Superstars or Saturday Night's Main Event and stuff like that, or they have all the classic pay-per-views. So when you have these anniversaries, for example, of these big matches, 25 years ago, Mankind got thrown off the Hell in a Cell, or 30 years ago, there was this big title change on this pay-per-view. Why not come out of a commercial break and show highlights of that and say, you want to watch the full match? It's up right now on Peacock. You can find it on the network. They don't do any of that. Because they got their money from Peacock, they don't care. Now they don't give a shit. They have no incentive to promote it. They got their $1 billion from Peacock, so whether or not they promote it or not doesn't matter to them. You have all this content there, so no wonder people don't watch it. I still don't think it would get a huge audience, but I guarantee you there are people, if they knew that some of these things were actually accessible on there, they might actually go over and check it out, but they just don't. They don't advertise it. They don't care. Thunder Force. Do you think WrestleMania 32 would have been better if there had not been so many top stars out with injuries? That was part of it. I don't want to say that was the only reason. I just think the main event, nobody that I knew wanted to see that main event. Roman Reigns against Triple H. They were still, the whole Roman Reigns babyface agenda was still in full force at that time. So it was a main event that people didn't want to see. We got a Brock Lesnar Jon Moxley match that I was looking forward to that ended up being a total disappointment. And add to that the injuries, there were people missing from the show. All of those things played a role. I think Bray Wyatt even. Bray Wyatt had the segment with The Rock. I think Bray was hurt. That's why he didn't have a match that year. God of Seduction says, where were you when Heidenreich accosted Cole? Unfortunately, I was at home watching on television. So I was a witness to that assault. It scarred me. Something I don't like to talk about. Dan McDaniels, Dan Noodles, $4.99. Say somehow, someway, CM Punk. I was wondering when that name would come up. CM Punk returns to WWE. Who would you have as his first program? Weirder shit has happened. Yeah, if it were up to me, CM Punk would not be back in WWE. But if he were to end up back in WWE, what would I have as his first program, huh? Man. You know, I think there's probably something there with him and Rollins, because Rollins is someone who's been very vocal about not liking him. So probably, I mean, unless you just throw him right into a feud with Roman Reigns, which I think is not something I would do right away. Probably Rollins. Jazz Jackrabbit, feuding faction. Bring back Los Boricuas against DOA. Yeah, those were factions that I didn't care to see. Los Boricuas, the Oddities, Truth Commission, DOA. Well, at least the Oddities were kind of fun, I guess. Golga with his Eric Cartman doll. But man, the number of absolute fucking boring factions during that period. Truth Commission, DOA, and Los Boricuas being the worst of the bunch. I don't miss that. Love Lie says, I was unadding people from Snapchat. See, I knew eventually I would get my social media platforms correct. I said Facebook, I said Twitter, I said Instagram. It turned out to be Snapchat. I don't want to be friends with anyone I don't know. Plus, I felt the urge to cut some people off. It is what it is. Well, it's always good to cut people off every now and then. Cut the dead weight. How many platforms are there these days? We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Threads, we have Snapchat, TikTok. What am I missing? What other ones are there that I'm not thinking about? It's Friendster. Isn't Friendster a platform? Is that a social media platform? First timer. Thank you for the 5. Buy or sell. Snap your fingers and everything Hulk Hogan has ever said became true, or everything Vince Russo becomes true. Oh, I gotta go with Hogan. I gotta go with Hogan. Bar none, I'm buying on Hogan. Can you imagine Hogan and Metallica? You mean to tell me you don't want to see that? You don't want to see Hulk Hogan jamming with Lars Ulrich? God of Seduction says, buy or sell Darby Allin or Dominic Mysterio. Oh boy, that's a tough one. It's a tough one because I enjoy Dominic as a character more than a wrestler. But I enjoy Darby as a wrestler just because the guy he's like a human wrecking ball. So if you could fuse Darby the wrestler with Dominic the character, you could find a way to kind of merge those two together. But if you put me on the spot and I have to choose, I would go with Darby. Slim Yoshi says, with WrestleMania 32, if Seth never got hurt, would he have faced Roman Reigns one-on-one or in a Shield triple threat? still convinced he would have main evented WrestleMania that year in 2016. I think it was the Rollins injury that necessitated, in their mind, Triple H coming back in that role and being the champion. So were he not hurt, and I don't remember all the stories back then at that time, but probably looking at Rollins and Reigns. And God of Seduction says, what is your Club Penguin account, bro? Oh, is that the new one? Yeah, I guess Reddit. Reddit would be technically a social media platform. That's true. Discord. It's too many. Whatever happened to like LimeWire and BearShare and... Or is that something totally... Oh, that was music. That's what that was. Kazaa. Remember Kazaa? Oh boy. Thank you for the super chat, love. I appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out with me here on a Friday night as we head into the weekend. Twitch, thank you. That's right. Twitch is another one. YouTube. The platform I'm literally streaming on right now. That is a social media platform as well. Napster was not a social media platform. Although I did spend quite a bit of time on there back in the day. The Pirate Bay. ICQ. I was on there too. AIM. That's right. AOL Instant Messenger. That's right. Hey, Larry. Have a good night, Larry. All right, let's be the booker.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to be the booker.
No gold tonight. My gift to you. Automatic be the booker. Although you could get those likes up a little bit for me, that would make me smile. Let's end this week on a high note. And begin... Well, so much for that. I shot my mouth off and I spoke too soon. The Great Khali. Funny that we should land on the Great Khali on a day where he made his WWE return at the Superstar Spectacle in India. Literally, the Great Khali just returned today and announced that he is going to have another match. He did not say when, he did not say where, but he threatened us all and said that he is going to have another match. Thankfully, that match will not be here in Be the Booker, because we are going to move on. Oh, man. That's what happens. I speak too soon, I open my mouth, and I pay the price for it. That's what I get. We begin with Allison Kay. I believe Allison Kay challenged for the Ring of Honor Women's Championship against Athena this week. I have some thoughts on Ring of Honor. Perhaps I'll share them with you on Sunday. How I feel this little Ring of Honor experiment is going, which is not very well. Allison Kay going to go one-on-one with Hikaru Shida. The two-time AEW Women's World Champion, Hikaru Shida. Now we do doubles. Begin with the natural disasters. Earthquake and typhoon. Look how happy he is. Look how happy Uncle Fred is, as Cody Rhodes calls him. Uncle Fred. The Shockmaster. What a happy guy he is. The natural disasters. Who can we fantasy book the natural disasters against that we would actually care about? How about Sting and Darby Allin? Imagine Darby Allin bumping around for Earthquake and Typhoon. Well, hey, funny enough, who was the one who introduced the Shockmaster on WCW television? It was Sting. I'm telling you, these things work out in very weird ways. The Khali one was weird enough, given that he was just on the show today. But having Sting and the Shockmaster in the same Be the Booker is actually very, very eerie, I must say. But that is a match that I would be oddly intrigued by. Yeah, we can blame Sting. Sting was the one who formally introduced us to the Shockmaster on a Flair for the Gold back in, I guess, what was that, 93? There's a match that I bet you never thought you would see. Well, there you go. Not a bad way. 2 out of 3 is not a bad way to end the week as far as Be the Booker is concerned. Now, I did mention earlier on, a week from tonight, I will be on commentary for the House of Glory show. We have Vikingo coming back in. He's going to be wrestling low-key for the very first time. And we have Matt Cardona defending his championship. And we have a bunch of, actually, the Vaudevillains are reunited for the first time in about 6 years. And they're going to be wrestling on that show as well. How about that? So that'll be next Friday. But I will be live with you again on Monday for the Raw review. And on Sunday, episode 825 of the podcast on all the usual podcast platforms. So I hope you guys will check that out. And until Monday, when I am back here with you, I wish you a very good weekend. Thank you for all of the love to ABK and Base Beerus and Lady Fire Panda and everybody in between. We got one more coming in here. Is this the Batista skinny jeans one? I think it might be.
I have one pair of skinny jeans, and I'm going to wear them every week just to piss you off.
Yes, it is. It is God of Seduction with the $35 Batista skinny jeans super chat. It seems that every 10th anniversary of WrestleMania, the show concludes with a common trope. Underdog, technical wrestler, ends up on top. Does WWE stick to this formula? Does underdog LA Knight close, or does Reigns win again? Or Cody? Well, I mean, you might be able to call LA Knight an underdog, but LA Knight does not fit that trope. So the trope that he's talking about, WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart wins the championship and closes the show. Bret Hart is one of the all-time greats, right? In-ring technicians. WrestleMania 20, Benoit wins. WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan wins. LA Knight would not fit that trope, as you put it. No one is mistaking LA Knight for a master technician in the ring. So that doesn't really work. Cody is probably going to be the guy. I don't really see any other realistic options. If they're going to beat Roman, it's going to be Cody. So I don't think that they're going to follow that same formula next year. And Juan Ocampo, you're going to be waiting on that OnlyFans for a while. What real-life feud should have been better? Matt Hardy against Edge should have been given more limelight in 05. I'm surprised we didn't get more matches between Bret and Shawn. You know, for all the talk about their feud, once they really started feuding and hating each other, we only got the match in Montreal. That was it. We should have had more matches between them. And if Bret never got hurt, he would have come back to WWE a lot sooner, and we would have had Bret and Shawn at WrestleMania. I would even go as far as to say that I think the match at WrestleMania 19, we got Michaels and Jericho. If Bret came back to the company in 02, I think we probably would have gotten Bret and Shawn in Seattle at WrestleMania 19. But as far as your question goes, Matt Hardy and Edge, that was the chance for Matt Hardy to really break out as a top star. And he just didn't do it. And I remember that comeback promo when Vince McMahon himself handed the mic to him and he had that chance to stand in the ring and hold court and address the crowd. And I remember watching that in real time and thinking, yeah, that wasn't very good. And I felt like even back then watching it live, and that was 2 years before I started doing the podcast. But I remember thinking, man, he He dropped the ball with that one, and then you saw how the booking was. I mean, their match at SummerSlam and how they booked Matt didn't work out very well for him. It worked out pretty well for Edge, though. But it did not work out well in WWE for Matt after that. Great job, Goldberg, shaking my head. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's good to dream about what those matches might have been like. But at least we always have Peacock, right? To go back and watch the old stuff. In fact, I might just do that. You know what? I'm actually overdue to go back and watch, and I would recommend this as a classic watch if you have not seen it yourself. Great American Bash 89. That was a good one. All right, be well. Stay safe. Thank you for all the super chats and all the love, and I will see you right back here again on Monday. We will start all over again with the Monday Night Raw review, and I'll see you this weekend for 825. Until then, take care, guys. EJ Slem coming in with a $4.99. Wrestling has really depressed me, but I did watch the Kurt Angle documentary, and it reminded me of how much I truly love wrestling and Kurt. Hey, Abdul Rahman, what's going on, man? Well, I hope that wrestling does not depress you, because if you're going to continue to watch it, you'll be depressed all the time. And there's so much wrestling to go around. Who wants to be miserable? But yeah, the Kurt Angle documentary. I will talk about the Kurt Angle documentary a little bit, not too much, on Sunday, because if you watched it, it might have looked a little familiar to you. And there's a reason for that. The Kurt Angle documentary they added on Peacock this week, most of it, the first half of it, which is the best part, is just repurposed from the A&E biography that they aired on television last year. And that was honestly the best part of the entire thing. So if you watched the A&E one last year, you really do not need to watch this one. But if you are a Kurt Angle fan, then you might want to go back and watch it. It is very good. But I was watching it thinking, boy, you know, some of this footage and this narration, it really looks and sounds very familiar to me. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and then I realized why. Because I had literally watched it the year before. But if you're looking for something to watch, yes, it is up on Peacock right now. It's called Angle. And it is very good. So go check that out. I'll see you guys next time.